What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the 2004/2005 mixtape by Hopsin. Basically this project is called L.A.U.S.D Result, and that came out somewhere in late 2004, early 2005. Now the thing about this particular project is this is Hopsin's true debut, I have to say. Now Emerge, I reviewed Emerge back in early 2022, I'd have to say, but that's not actually his true debut, just because I think that one was made more in like 2007, 2008, right before he signed to Ruthless, or just like his early kind of album days. That was kind of like his demo album that was supposed to get him signed and stuff. But this is one that Hopsin kind of made when he was still kind of in Leftover, his high school days. L.A.U.S.D Result is one that he made in his Leftover kind of high school days and things like that. And it's actually a pretty good tape, I'd have to suppose. This is interesting just because this particular project came out in like 2004, 2005, and the pitch behind this particular stuff is just has a good valve about it, just because I look after this is stuff that in 2004, 2005, amidst like the times of like, you know, Eminem's Encore and the Games documentary and some of those particular type projects, 50 Cent's The Massacre, some of that type of stuff, Hopsin was having his own sound. And the thing about it is Hopsin had star power even on his debut project. So the thing it is interesting because he kind of shifted the tides a little bit in like the late 2000s, early 2010s with his albums like Raw and Knock Madness and Gazing at the Moonlight and some of those particular type ones. But it's just interesting that that particular sound was trying to be fleshed out here way back in 2004. It's just kind of like a page turner in certain senses. Now this album kind of did decently. This is not like this was on Dat Piff back in the days that Dat Piff was. Now this was on Dat Piff back in the days that Dat Piff was still around, but the thing about it is it just didn't have that like official stamp behind it, because Hopsin was more low key back in those days. But still, I'd say it's a pretty damn good job. You're still able to find this on like Mixtape websites, so I highly recommend it because this is actually a pretty quality project here. I had a lot of surprises and it was just overall pretty engaging. Now there's some stuff like Hopsin nowadays I kind of feel like is here and there. I feel like I don't really like his new singles only. I don't really like his new singles only format that he's been doing since about 2018, 2019 or so forward. But I had to say this is a pretty excellent project here. Definitely going to get a pretty decently high score, I'd have to suppose, and definitely one that I just have encouragingly good feelings about. It's just one I want to say that I gave Emerge back in 2022 a decently high score, but this one's actually pretty solid too. I mean, it has 12 songs in here, so once again, you can find this. It's not hidden or things like that. If you punch in L.A.U.S.D Result, you can find this on like Mixtape websites. So I do recommend it. Now, I don't know if there was a single, but I'm going to go ahead and recommend the 8 songs out of 12 I recommend. So those 8 songs, basically those 8 songs I recommend would be Don't Act Like You Know Me, ADHD, Put Your Hands Up, Out of Your Mind, What You Know About Hopsin, Be My Girl, I'm Hopsin, and No Respect. So basically, to talk about some of these, like Put Your Hands Up is a pretty nice one, I'd have to say. This is like a hazy kind of late day decent gig type fun, I'd have to say. It's good for like some decent gigs, like mid-sized gigs, something like that, 20 people there, 30 people, something like that. Just a decent little size gig as far as that pitch kind of happens. This is just a fun kind of energetic rumbler, I'd have to say, and it's just a house party kind of smash. So it's good that Hopsin kind of has some of these turned up type ones just for the initial stepping out, just some house party gigs, things like that, just things where there'd be PlayStation music going, some things like Guitar Hero, some Red Cup, some stuff like that. As far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens, just a good kind of overall type feels to kind of have. This is just a good kind of thrilling one. I'm glad that Hopsin has some of these on here. Another one like that is ADHD. It's another good thriller as far as that particularly kind of happens. But don't Act Like You Know Me is a pretty good highlight. This is like a creeping kind of mini horrorcore type hit, I'd have to say. This is like vintage Hopsin, I would definitely feel like, and it's just great for like the 2000s fair. So the thing about this particular stuff is the fact that this was made 2004, 2005 is a pretty good pitch. The fact that this was made 2004, 2005 is a pretty good pitch. Just an interesting concept because this was just kind of ahead of the times in terms of the stuff that, because this was just kind of ahead of the times in terms of what Hopsin would do and such. So I definitely like the particular vibe of that particular song. This is a real nice one that was just kind of in like a mini horrorcore sense, I'd have to say. There's a good amount of creeping songs in here, so I do like the fact that Hopsin has some of that ghastly type feel about him. It's definitely a good concept to get some of these. I'm Hopsin's a pretty good one. I'm Hopsin's a pretty good one. This is a lay game down and vanilla kind of entry type hit, I'd have to say. It's just a real Slim Shady like song, I'd have to suppose. Something like that by Eminem. One of those initial type ones that Eminem would do, just kind of an introductory type one, kind of like My Name Is, real Slim Shady, some of those type ones. And I just would have to say it's like a creeping type beat that this one has like a creeping type beat that it particularly kind of has. So it's a good highlight to kind of have it just within that pitch. This is basically like a pretty introductory type one. This would be a good starting point for Hopsin as far as that pitch kind of happens. I mean, the beats on here are good, but it's just kind of the concept. They're just kind of, the beats on this particular mixtape are good, but they're just kind of muddled. I would have to say the concept about these particular ones is they just sound like something. They sound pretty similar to like the Gazing at the Moonlight vibes, just kind of in a more muddled kind of mixtape type sense. So it's just a good concept, but they're all good. I mean, a lot of these are pretty damn good. For the most part, this album is pretty productively suave as far as that particular pitch kind of has. This is just a real stellar type one in terms of most of the beats on here, but this is just one that just kind of feels like an introductory type one. It's kind of like Hop is Back or something like that, just in a more muddled sense, I'd have to say. What You Know About Hopsin's a pretty good highlight. This is like a jive. What You Know About Hopsin's a pretty good highlight. This is like a jivey kind of evening furore of a song, I'd have to say. It's a stepping out and getting social kind of moods. This is a stepping out and getting social kind of moods kind of song, I'd have to say. It's just an overall good pitch. What You Know About Hopsin's pretty good for like an evening stepping out kind of sense, I'd have to say. This is a good pitch to kind of have just for getting groceries or snacks at like a gas station, something like that, picking up some beers, getting some smokage, some things like that, as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens. Just good for some autumn kind of evening fare, just cooler weather, something like that, or warmer weather, either way, just something for like September, October, something within that pitch, just to kind of step out a little bit, get some dap, get some pounds, some stuff like that. The initial kind of socializing, just things like that. It's actually a pretty jivey song. It's like a high mid pace kind of song, I'd have to say. So it's a good pitch to kind of have. It's really like the whimsical and kind of riveting type feel, just within like a relative kind of, I mean, it's not quite horrorcore sense, but it just kind of has like some kind of underground jive about it that just works pretty well, I'd have to say. So that's a nice one. Out of Your Mind's a pretty good highlight. This is like a hazy kind of grim vibes for the ladies song, I'd have to say. This is like a spook feel that this song particularly kind of has, but it just has some social kind of, this song has a spook feel about it, but it's a social song, I'd have to say, and this song just has some autumn pizzazz about it. So Out of Your Mind just feels like vintage Hopsin as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of has just some horrorcore type vibes that just have that same aspect. It's like Gazing at the Moonlight and Raw and some of those particular type ones as far as that pitch kind of goes. This is just a good highlighted one, and this song's for the ladies on top of that, so this has a good pitch as far as that kind of particularly kind of goes. It's a real kind of thrilling one. Then No Respect's a pretty good one. This is definitely, this one, the No Respect's a pretty excellent one. This is like an imperative kind of grim vibes that's similar to I Need Help off of Knock Madness, I would have to say. It's definitely a good pitch from Hopsin as far as that particularly kind of goes. And this is just kind of a residential and out and about type tune, I'd have to say. So this one kind of reminds me once again of like some gas station hopping and things like that, just picking up things like Chex Mix, Pepsi, some things like that. Just kind of the pitch of just getting some things, some smokage, some beers, some of that type pitch. Just kind of an imperative type one. Just definitely good for some night. No Respect is definitely good for some night traverse. I'd have to say just some good night city hopping as far as that kind of happens in like a residential sense. Definitely good for some night city hopping in like a residential sense. I definitely have to suppose that's a pretty good highlight for that. And then ADHD is a pretty good highlight. Definitely like this one. This is like a manic kind of mini nightclub pounder, I would have to say. It's just a good set it off song, I would definitely feel like, and it's a social hopper and icebreaker. This song is like a social hopper and icebreaker, I would definitely have to say. So I really like the energetic type feel of this particular one. This is just a pretty rave type one. This is definitely one of Hopsin's more energetic songs for the time as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens. This is just a good kind of hands up and just get crunk and loose a little bit as far as that pitch kind of happens. So I would definitely have to say pretty good dance song just to kind of have this like almost like a mini kind of mosh type song, just to kind of have some energetic type pitches as far as that kind of goes. Definitely one of the mixtape's best songs, I'd have to say, especially in terms of energy and overall thrillingness and just kind of contemporary type feels, I'd have to say. And then Be My Girl is a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely a pretty nice one. This is like a personable kind of ladies cut. Be My Girl's like a personable kind of ladies cut, I'd have to say. This song gives like Eminem ruminating. This song gives Eminem ruminating type vibes, I'd have to say. And it's just a brooding and kind of glared type song, I would definitely feel like. So this is just kind of a moody type one. Another ladies song that hits pretty well, kind of similar to Out. Be My Girl's kind of similar to Out of Your Mind. Just a little bit more personable and a little bit more insular as far as that pitch kind of happens. But this is just stock and kind of vintage Hopsin, I'd have to say. This is just kind of Be My Girl's just kind of one of his more introspective type cuts. It's just great for some ruminating type vibes. It definitely sounds like something Eminem would have done on like the Eminem Show or Encore, one of those type pitches as far as that particularly kind of happens. So Be My Girl is just a darker, kind of more haunting type song, I'd have to say, but it works in that pitch as far as that kind of happens. So that's basically the project as far as that particularly kind of goes. So talk about some of the songs I didn't. So talk about the 4 songs I didn't recommend on here. Like a couple of these, like the Hops freestyle is just not a very good instrumental. The kind of freestyle too, it was not a very compelling listen at all, and pretty much had one of the worst beats on the whole tape, I'd have to say. Probably shouldn't have been even on this project, I'd have to say, as far as that pitch kind of happens. Pots and Pans was just kind of a cheaper type song. Pots and Pans was just kind of a blunder, I'd have to say, and a cheaper type song. Didn't really like the fact that there were pots and pans banging on this particular production, so that was the one that was just kind of an awkward one that I just didn't really care to listen to that much. Let Them Know just kind of had like a kind of passe type beat. I mean, that one was a decent one. It was kind of similar to like a little bit of like let them know it was similar a little bit to ADHD in no respect, but it just didn't quite pull it off quite as well, I'd have to say. So that one was just kind of a blunder, I'd have to suppose. Then LAUSD result was just kind of one I just didn't vibe with as much. That one, LAUSD result, the title track was just more of like a frolicking type song that I just couldn't see myself listening to too often when it came up in like a shuffle or something like that. It was just not one that I really, it was just one I didn't gel with as much and didn't quite feel as compelled to listen to as much. So I'd have to say as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happened. But that's basically the project as far as that particularly is kind of concerned. So I'd have to say me recommending 8 songs out of 12 on this particular mixtape. I'm going to go ahead and give this mixtape like a 7.75 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty damn good as far as that pitch kind of has. But just because this project is so short in some senses, I just would have to say when there's a few songs that you don't enjoy, kind of detracts from. It's just a few minor mishaps as far as I can have. So, I mean, this is Hopsin's debut project, so he was doing a lot of things right. He had a lot of strengths on here, a lot of good things, revolutionary type sound that would impact things in the 2010s as far as that pitch kind of happens. This is about 4 or 5 years before his real impact was supposed to happen. So I definitely applaud that particular concept as far as that kind of happens. It's a good pitch. That's this kind of thing. So the social score I'm going to give like an 8.75 to. I kind of feel like that's a good pitch. It's good enough to kind of get. There's definitely some social gems on here. Hopsin has a lot of outstepping. I'm definitely glad that he's not more insular on this particular project because, I mean, he's not really a smoker or a drinker, and he says that numerous times that he does. He's pretty straight edge as far as that particular kind of happens. But I do like the overall social kind of affability. There's some good hazy kind of lady songs. I like some of these haunting type vibes. There's some good pitches to kind of get within that sense from Hopsin as far as getting some of these outing type vibes just within that horrorcore type pitch, especially out of 2004, 2005, I'd have to say. So it's just some good social vibes. Just get that sort of stuff, some kind of nightclub songs, some kind of outing songs, some gas station, just walking around, just night haze and kind of night commerce type songs, and some lady songs. So it just has some good pitches as far as that kind of happens. In terms of the future, like this may be, in terms of the future, that's difficult because I've covered every last project by Hopsin, I'd have to say. So unless he drops like a new album from like 2024 forward, I'd have to say I've covered everything on this particular channel. I've covered everything by Hopsin on this particular channel, so I definitely recommend checking out the Hopsin playlist. It's got a bunch of stuff. It even has some, this playlist even has some funk volume type stuff, like some folks like Dizzy Wright and Jaron Benton, and some folks like Dizzy Wright and Jaron Benton and Swizz and some of those type folks that were on funk volume that Hopsin kind of fucked with around that time. So it's some good stuff to kind of get, but this is definitely a rock solid mixtape here, and I definitely highly recommend it. It's some good stuff, even if you don't wholesomely know about it. It's a pretty low key type project. Not everyone kind of knows about this particular one, but it's a good pitch to kind of get and seek out.